The price of energy has been the primary focus of recent regulatory reviews with the Thwaites Review and the ACCC Review. However, the quality of service, and more particularly customer service, has been given a lot less attention by regulators. I'm sure we've all experienced poor customer service in one way or another. Two particularly bad examples from the retail energy market from last year. One retailer made headlines for signing up an individual with dementia living in a nursing home to a business tariff, and another wrongfully disconnected a gas customer for 113 consecutive days. So not great. But I'm sure that some of us have had great customer service experiences, helpful staff resolving things really quickly. The problem is that there are few, if any, reliable measures or comprehensible data sources for consumers to identify higher from lower quality customer service providers. And this is not just in energy, but across a range of markets. And this led CPRC to think a bit more about the nature of service quality in complex markets in our issues paper, but are they any good? In his 1971 paper, The Market for Lemons, George Akerlof identified that information about product or service quality was key to consumer decision-making and played an essential part of well-functioning markets. Akerlof noted that buyers for second-hand cars could not differentiate between a high-quality vehicle, what we might call a peach, from a lower-quality vehicle or a lemon, resulting in an information asymmetry between buyer and seller. Consequently, a seller could charge the going market rate for a lemon despite its poor quality, and Akerlof argued this would ultimately drive peaches from the market altogether. We might apply the same thinking to service providers of energy. How can consumers differentiate high-quality providers from low-quality providers? Is this important, you might ask? According to the Australian Consumer Survey done by EY Sweeney, it costs consumers $16.31 billion in out-of-pocket costs and time to resolve a range of issues across a range of consumer markets. Problems relating to electricity, finance, telco and ISP cost consumers $6.26 billion per year alone. So arguably this additional cost borne by consumers might be avoided if consumers could distinguish between higher and lower quality providers ahead of purchasing or switching provider. Repeated experiences of poor practice are frustrating, and they might even result in reduced consumer trust in providers and the markets more generally to deliver. Notably, the 2018 Elderman Trust Barometer observed that consumer trust fell across a range of sectors, with the energy sector considered the least trusted by Australians. Cambridge philosopher Honora O'Neill has argued that trust itself can't be improved directly, but can be earned through demonstrable trustworthiness. She argues that indicative measures of trustworthiness include honesty, competency and reliability. And I think, when you think about what constitutes a good quality customer service, those three aspects are a pretty good starting point, and they're also missing when you have a really bad customer service experience. And thinking about the importance of service quality information from a supply side perspective, if a firm invests in higher quality service but can't signal this to consumers, it may be unable to leverage its competitive advantage and recoup its investment. In a context where consumers encounter significantly high search costs, perhaps due to market complexity or overwhelming choices, firms may respond by increasing their spending on advertising and marketing rather than competing to reduce costs or invest in higher quality service. This is referred to as X inefficiency. Lower consumer trust in a market, a consequence of either perceived or genuine failure of competency, might also result in public support for more extensive government and regulatory intervention in a market, and that's something we've seen in both the energy and financial services markets. The consequences of this intervention are pretty significant. We're still seeing the fallout of the Royal Commission, but it's worth noting AMP reported its profits fell 97% 2 weeks ago, and they admitted to the ASX they'd been hurt by the reputational impact of the Royal Commission. The point here is that reputation can affect profitability, and that in turn should matter for shareholders. There appears to be a shift internationally towards providing consumers with increased transparency around this information as a sunlight remedy. In April 2018, the UK government issued its Consumer Green Paper, calling the various UK regulators, Ofgem, Ofwat, Ofcom and the Financial Conduct Authority to provide consumer-facing measures of service quality and non-price attributes. So this example is an advert that Zurich Insurance puts out. Insurers are now required, as part of this reform, to provide consumer-facing payout ratios. So Zurich uses this as its kind of selling point, its competitive advantage. In the US, this is a screenshot of a government comparator for nursing homes, looking at the different non-price attributes. So they compare overall rating, health inspections, staffing, quality measures, and distance from where the consumer is. It doesn't compare price, but those kind of aspects of quality. And a third example I've got is another screenshot of a comparator run by Citizens Advice in the UK. They're a consumer organisation, and they run this comparison website, including both pricing and a measure of service quality, which is based on performance metrics provided by retailers. And that allows consumers to trade off the two to some degree. Anecdotally, Citizens Advice report that the poorest performing retailers seek advice directly about how they might improve their service, while the top ranked retailers compete to be the best. So CPRC last year initiated a multi-stage research project with the RMIT Behavioural Business Lab to test the hypothesis that a measure of customer service might affect consumer decision making in the retail market. The research is ongoing, but I thought to share some kind of high-level findings. So the first qualitative component identified 4 non-price attributes. These are transparency, agency, convenience, and authenticity. The next component tested consumers' willingness to pay for these attributes relative to price in what's called the discrete choice experiment. So the results of that are presented in this graph. In high-level terms, price is the most important factor. I don't think that's terribly surprising to anyone. But these other aspects are of importance to consumers. They have some willingness or preference for these attributes. And it's worth noting that y-axis starts at 0.2, so the attributes range from kind of 0.4 to 0.27. Subsequent research stages for this project will look to test whether this we'll be building a proto measure affects consumer decision making, first in a lab experiment and then in a field experiment. As part of this process, CPRC is now gathering relevant data sets that might help to populate some of the measures identified. We hope to draw on data sets collected by regulators, performance reporting, data sets developed by retailers, internal or stuff that might be collected internally, ombudsmen and advocates as well. Ultimately, we hope that this research helps to develop a measure that enables consumers to discern higher from lower quality retailers, to drive competition in the market for higher quality customer service, and perhaps even improve trust in the market. Thank you.